Well, we can get right into it. Maybe we'll start with the newest ones, and then kind of head back to the beginning of the Switch's launch release.
Sure.
So the one that you had alluded to in the intro that you played today that I've been playing the last couple weeks, and we actually have a review for on both YouTube and our the Thirsty Mage channel by Ben. A terrific review. If you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend either reading or watching because it's terrific. But this is for the Supergiant Games developed Hades. So this was a game that did start on PC. I believe it was in like early access for up until recently, I believe, like until the shadow drop there on the Switch and a few weeks ago. But yeah, this is a roguelite, I guess, because it does do the progression. Like you very much are expected to die and expected to die often. An isometric style action game that is very much in the Supergiant Games wheelhouse. Like if you've played Bastion or Transistor, it very much feels like a Supergiant game, but it really does have that roguelike feel to it. It doesn't have, even with it being like multiple runs and multiple deaths and that sort of thing. What I find amazing that they were able to do is it was to still put in their signature kind of linear story and voice acting and to give it like this atmosphere that's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it's got the same art style, reminiscent of Transistor, especially. The combat, the satisfying nature of the combat and the sound effects and all that, like, yeah, a staple of the games they've made. I haven't played Pyre yet, but definitely Bastion and Transistor, you get a lot of the same feels for the combat in those games as you do in this one. It's super fast paced. Like it's incredibly hard to put down. Like I now understand why after this game launched on Switch and I guess left early access that everyone has been talking about it, everyone has been playing it. Joe at NWR gave it a 10. I'm not surprised. I think this is going to be a lot of people's game of the year, and it's certainly going to be a huge part of the game of the year discussions with everybody. So yeah, if you haven't checked out Hades, definitely look into it. Check out some reviews like the one we've got on the Thirsty Mage. But yeah, do yourself a favor. If you enjoy any of Supergiant Games' previous titles or any kind of roguelites at all, like I'm sure you would easily get into this one. It's accessible, the progression is awesome, the combat is super satisfying, like I said. I'm kind of ignoring the story a little bit. I'm just kind of enjoying the gameplay and trying out different buffs and perks and abilities you can get. You can unlock different weapons with keys that you pick up. I was saying to you, David, before we started recording it, I'm really enjoying this shield weapon that you kind of throw like Captain America, and it bounces from target to target and then returns to you. But you can also block with it, or you can just smash people in the face with it, or charge it up and do a kind of a tackle or a dash attack with it. Your character has a dashing move they can use to avoid enemies and avoid projectiles. You have, in addition to a basic attack, you've also got kind of a projectile thing that you can upgrade as well. Like they call it, I can't remember, is it called a cast or something like that? It's got a funny name, but with the A button you can do that on Switch, and so you can upgrade that one. I was lobbing like these grenades that I guess they were kind of like poison potions. They would create a mist that was stunning people, but you can also upgrade. Yeah, so you can upgrade those, make them more potent. You run into different gods that grant you different benefits to your basic attack or your special attacks, your dash, things like that. And then just other perks you can get, like increased damage, increased speed. You're earning money, you're earning currency to spend outside of a run after you die. You can improve your stats or improve your abilities for subsequent runs. Man, it's an awesome game. Like I can't believe how good it is. Actually, like I know everybody was saying it. I'm like, oh, but I don't necessarily love games like this. But man, this is right up there. I definitely see why it's gotten so much hype around it.
Yeah, and this one on our scale of like to light, this is definitely closer to light because there's many of the key features are actually missing, like the map, although random, I wouldn't call it procedurally generated because the rooms themselves, like, the way that that it works is like you enter a room and you clear the enemies, and then often there's a choice between two paths, depending on which benefit you want to get. Like once you've cleared a room, there'll be two paths, and it'll show you what you will get depending on which room you go into, and then you just kind of go to the next room, kill everyone there, and keep on moving. So like there's randomness to what rooms are next, but the rooms themselves are like you'll see the same room very often. Like each of the different levels. So there's like Tartarus, and then I'm blanking on the name of the next one. Asphodel. I think it's Asphodel, and then there's Elysium. So like there's themes to the world, and then there'll be like, I don't know, 10 rooms that just kind of randomly, but the rooms themselves don't change. They're very much set. Mm-hmm. The enemies are different, but the rooms themselves are set. So yeah, there's really no procedural generation of the map per se. No exploration, like you're just going from room to room. Definitely combat, definitely resource management, because you have to decide on what equipment and what boons from the gods that you'll use.
Yeah, and how to spend your money, or you can actually pick up items that it's like, I guess it's like nectar of the gods or something, and you can offer it to the gods in exchange for their favor, or for maybe they might throw you an extra item or something like that. So yeah, there's a lot of items to pick up and to keep track of, and things that you can spend to acquire different things. It's not. It seems like there's a lot going on, but it's very, you pick it up very easily. Like there's not a lot of necessity for any kind of tutorial, I don't think. Everything seems to come quite naturally.
Yeah, I agree, and definitely no permadeath, because every time you die, you walk from the bloodbath into Hades' lobby there. So, and then as you come back, you go back to his bedroom, and you can add permanent benefits that make you stronger as you go along. So, yeah, it's a terrific game. Definitely a fun one. High on my list of Switch roguelites, if that's the types of game you enjoy.
I mean, I can't imagine that I won't be including this in my top 5 games of the year. And I've been playing it for like 3 or 4. I've played it for one day for like 3 or 4 hours, and I'm thinking about it right now. I'm thinking, as soon as we stop recording, I want to go and play this game. I'm going to say, David, I got to go. I have to play more Hades. Like I got to, I think, what might be one of the final bosses, if not the final boss, on a run earlier today, and I'm like, oh, okay, now I'm like even more motivated to beat the game. And but even then, like after you beat it, like there's so much more to unlock and to do. There's different kind of objectives to achieve that I think unlock or grant you extra items or extra points to spend on different things. So yeah, Hades is really, really good. I'm sure this isn't going to be the last time we talk about this game. Obviously, we'll do a kind of a year-end wrap-up, and Hades will probably be a big part of that too. But we do have other games to get to, obviously, so we don't want to take away too much of the spotlight from them as well.
No, and there's so for 2020, I would say there's a couple honorable mentions. I'll just quickly mention a recent game I played from NIS America, which is a Void Terrarium. This is a more traditional very closer to the roguelike style, where you're you're this little robot living in this post-apocalyptic world, where you find a human that's dying, and you want to help keep them alive. So you're venture out into the wastelands of where the enemies are to collect different supplies to come and kind of help nurse the human back to health. And of those key features, it really has a lot. Like it has a procedurally generated map, definitely changes every time you go in. It is turn-based in the sense that nothing, like you choose, like each movement, once you stop, the game stops around you, so you can take a moment and look around and kind of decide what your movements, what your actions are going to be. It has that different actions for different areas. The multiple ways of going through the dungeons are available. Definitely has the resource management, because you do pick up benefits, and there's only so many slots you could choose, and there's only so many slots of resources that you can take back with you back to the human. and definitely has combat and exploration. So it's very closer, very much closer to a roguelike, which also makes sense because it also feels like an older game, just with the graphics and kind of the simplistic way of playing. But another great option for that style of game in 2020.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't played Void Terrarium, but a game I did play recently, reviewed it for NWR about a month ago, Going Under, which is kind of a double entendre, I suppose, because it's a company that they make soft drinks. Their name is Fizzle, and you play as this intern. I don't quite remember her name, but she's just kind of starting out. She's looking for a job in marketing, and she gets hired. And when she meets the boss of the company, he says, "Oh yeah, we need you to clear out the dungeons for underneath the underneath the company or underneath the building. Clear out the dungeons of monsters for us." So she's quickly taken aback, but it kind of sets off or starts off with the humor that kind of permeates the game. So you go through these different dungeons. You can kind of pick up almost any object in the room, which is pretty cool. Brooms, fire extinguishers, knives, balls, all those different things. Anything that's not nailed down, I suppose staplers, and you can shoot giant staples at enemies. You go through about a series of 8 to 9 rooms before you get to a boss. The enemies do a lot of damage. There's not a ton of carryover. This is almost closer to a roguelike, I suppose. The two things that do carry over from run to run is your coworkers can become mentors for you, the intern. They can grant buffs depending on which one you select. For example, I think one of the guys who works at the cafeteria, if you make him your mentor, then he will show up in the in-dungeon shop and give you a free item. So there is currency you can spend that you earn by defeating enemies, and once in a while you'll run into a shop where you can spend it to maybe increase your health. There's a lot of different perks you can pick up, like maybe one where if you get hit, you'll electrify enemies and stun them. One that makes your weapons really big when you pick them up. There's also a special room you go into where you have to accept a curse that lasts for about 3 rooms. And if you take the curse, then you get to pick up like 2 or 3 different items to take with you. It's really fun. It's really difficult early on. It is a game where you want to get more skillful and kind of learn when to be patient, when to be aggressive with certain enemies. The bosses are fun. It is very colorful as well, very vibrant. I had a lot of fun with it. It was a game I didn't expect to like necessarily because of there's not as much progression with this one, but I found myself getting good at it fairly early on, and that kind of propelled me through. Once you think you beat the game once you beat Going Under the first time, or at least it feels like it, there's a kind of a second world that opens up that it is very, very challenging, and it kind of fits with the story and everything that's going on, but definitely for a game that's much more challenging than something like Hades, and much less about the progression, just about a little bit more of your skill and experience. Going Under is pretty good. It's published by Team 17. They've done games like Moving Out. I think trying to think what else they published. They published Death Squared as well, I think, another a different puzzle game.
They did that Prison Break game too that I reviewed. I can't think of its name now. The
Escapists?
Yes, that's it. The Escapists.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I think they might have done Overcooked as well, so they're familiar with those kind of games. You've probably seen Team 17's either development work or publishing work a bunch, but yeah, Going Under is very charming. It's very funny. It's got a very kind of slapstick humor style to it. There is one other perk that you can carry with you. Once you've used a certain perk enough times in the dungeon, you add it kind of to a roster of perks that you can choose to bring with you on subsequent runs. So if one is that maybe every so often enemies will drop health, normally they don't. If you bring that perk with you into the dungeon, that's the one thing you can have with you, and you'll start off every run with that one. So there's some progression, there is things to unlock, but it is a little bit more challenging of a game. But definitely want to check out again if you're a fan of games like this, or even if you're not and you're just looking for maybe games to get into. It is a pretty fun one just because of the style and presentation.
Yeah, and it seems like that's the one commonality between all of the games that we're going to talk about is the ability to get into the game right away, like to really maybe not master it right away, but to understand enough very quickly so that it kind of sucks you in right away. I think that seems to be one of the factors that kind of can dictate whether these types of games either succeed or fail. Is that ability to be like, to get you, because you really need to get people like very quick, like few minutes, like just get in, start fighting, get it right away, and then build off of that.
Yeah, I mean, you have to feel like you can be successful in a game, or that there is a kind of light at the end of the tunnel. If you play it and you just you fail, and there's nothing coming of that. You don't feel like you're getting better. You don't feel like you're learning more. Then you're probably going to bounce off the game pretty fast, and maybe bounce off similar games pretty fast. So I do think Going Under is a game that you might be frustrated very, very early on, but after you do a few runs, you do start to learn the things you need to do to get to the end, to beat the boss, and what a good run looks like, and what items maybe suit your play style and things like that. So it is a little bit more accessible, I would say, but it does have the challenge in the back half of the game.
Yeah, and so looking back at 2019, we each have a game that stands out for us. The one for me is a little off though, or a little weird in the sense that there's no it's not a combat game per se. This is Slay the Spire. It's a trading card style game, but this was a really runaway hit for me. Like it sucked me in right away. I'm kind of a sucker for trading card games to start with, so I really got into it quickly, and the way that it's set up is there's like multiple endings. So when you think you've beaten the game, you realize that you've just unlocked the path to a new area, like a second world. And yeah, it was one of these games that just it kept me coming back to the point where I ended up having to get the best ending. Like a lot of times, like these types of games, you play through them a few times and you get to the end, and with the amount of games that we play, there's not always a lot of time to replay multiple times to get like the endings for all the characters, so you can see the final ending. But this one I definitely had to, because there's 3 different characters, each with their own style of fighting. So there's like a warrior character, kind of a mage-ish. They use potions. It was more of like a poison way of killing. And then there's like this robot with this really weird kind of orb attacks. So each one felt different, and it very much had a building up of, you'd go on runs and you go through and you would collect new cards on each run that could be used in subsequent runs. So you really were building up your character as you progressed. Definitely resource management, because you would be presented with 3 cards after winning a fight, and you would have to choose only one of those cards. And the paths, like you would know the paths up front of where you were going, and because there's very limited ways to heal your character, you'd have to kind of make concessions on, okay, like how many people do I want to fight? Will I have enough HP by the time I get to the boss of the world? But yeah, the trading card aspect of it, I think, was more visual than because it was very much like a turn-based combat system. Like they could have done it in a way where it was just menu-based. Like I think the cards were more of a presentation to a certain extent. But definitely a game that really sucked me in 2019, and I put a lot of hours into that game.
Yeah, my brother was raving about that game kind of around the same time you were, Dave, and he still encourages me to play it, and I would like to at some point. The game that I found notable as a roguelite in 2019 was Children of Morta, and I talked about the game on the podcast a fair bit, so you can go back and listen to one of those previous episodes. I'm sure we talked about Slay the Spire as well, but at least I focus on what makes it a roguelite title. You're dungeon crawling. It's kind of an action RPG combat style. It does have a little bit of a feeling like something like Diablo, but not as, maybe the environments aren't nearly as large. It's got a little bit more of a story to it, and kind of heartfelt characters and emotional kind of narrative beats to it. But what makes it roguelite is the idea that every time you go through the dungeon, it is going to look different. The enemies aren't always going to be in the same places, even if you will find the same types of enemies. But you can collect gold that you can spend when you get back to the family house, the Bergsons, I think they're called. When you get back to their house, there's different shops where you can spend the currency you pick up in the dungeon. You can improve the damage you do. I think you can improve your defense or your speed. You can unlock different ruins that will pop up in the dungeon as well, that will grant you different perks. Maybe this one was a little bit skewed towards you do have to. Sorry, I should say this one has a good balance between that idea of getting better at the game with every run, but also there are things you can unlock through gameplay that will make runs easier. I found this one really satisfying. It ended up getting a bunch of DLC as well. I think there might be a bit of story DLC, paid story DLC that's coming soon or released recently, but I know it did have some free updates as well. So Children of Morta, one of my favorite games from last year, definitely check it out. Just know that the way it does roguelite is a little bit more difficult, a little bit kind of, again, in between those two distinctions, like and light, just in the fact that it's the type of progression you're bringing with you is probably not, it's not going to be enough to save you. But there are different characters. One of the cool things is that perks unlocked for one character will unlock perks for other characters as well. So there's kind of that family dynamic of if the father gets better at one thing, his children also get better at it. So I really like that aspect of it as well. So there are some unlockables that make it kind of roguelite, but there's also a lot of challenge, and you can't necessarily rely on the progression to get you through. You do have to eventually you raise your skill level so you can get through the harder dungeons.
Yeah, that's a game that I really been meaning to play as well. It's funny that in 2019 we each played one that the other didn't. We really got into.
That's gonna keep happening as more and more games come out, and we have obviously different schedules and different things to review and take care of. But I mean, that's the beauty of a podcast like this, is where we can share our experience about different games, and even if we want to get to those ones at some point, whether that happens or not, at least we can speak to the games a little bit and know how enjoyable they are.
Yeah, and up next is 2018 with arguably saw the release of the current most popular roguelite. I think potentially is Dead Cells. I think. It hit the Switch. I mean, it had some notable marketing or it was in the headlines for reasons beyond it being good. That kind of got it some notoriety, but the fact that it was a fantastic game on top of that really, really helped as well. And it's funny. I see so many similarities between Hades and Dead Cells, like. In the sense of like having different weapons to choose and the way that you build up the character and selecting perks at the beginning of the runs and that sort of thing. With the one exception being that Dead Cells is very much a 2D side scroller, up, down, left, right, as opposed to the isometric Hades.
Yeah, so the perspective is a major difference, obviously. I think at Dead Cells, I haven't played it yet, actually. I really should, of course. But my understanding is that you kind of unlock shortcuts in the game, or that you can change the environment. Like maybe you get a key that unlocks a door, and the next time you do a run, that door will be open. Is that, David, is that right?
Yeah, so there's abilities that you collect that will then give you access to different paths. Like when you first start up Dead Cells, you'll go through the first dungeon, and there's only one way to exit, because the jump to the other path is not available. Like I believe it's like too high to jump. So there's like I think it's some kind of grappling hook or something, but I can't remember exactly. But there's an ability that provides you access to the door that would take you through another path. So but it's different paths that become unlocked when you get the abilities.
Right, but it's not like a character progression per se. It's not your character getting better or stronger or more capable. Like it is more like environmental progression or maybe exploration progression. Like the map does open up as you play more. And I mean, at least to this point, I don't think Hades has something like that. Maybe that's one of the things that makes Dead Cells so unique as a roguelite is the fact that it's not just your character improving or the idea that you need to get better and better, but you're also just unlocking new ways to go through it or different places to go. Like it kind of reminds me of Dark Souls or even Bloodborne. Bloodborne is a game for PlayStation 4 we're going to cover at the end of the month. Really looking forward to that. I've been playing it recently. Bloodborne is a lot of the exploration in Bloodborne is about going back to where you were and unlocking gates, dropping ladders, unlocking paths to make subsequent runs through areas more easier to do or to make areas more accessible. So that's a huge part of that game. There's that kind of environmental progression that happens by opening up shortcuts. It sounds like Dead Cells does something similar, and that's a unique form of progression, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember at the time just feeling like Dead Cells successfully was able to take a lot of elements from a lot of genres and kind of apply them to that roguelite formula. And it just worked. Like it was easy. It was easy to pick up. It was easy to figure out. The action was fast, exciting, and it just they just made it work. It was a great time. It still is, and I know I haven't been in there. I know there's been DLC, but I haven't haven't been able to touch any of the DLC. It's just a game. Like you said, it's tough in the review business to go back to games from years ago, but if I ever was going to, it is intriguing to see. I'd like to see how it's changed since that original release.
Yeah, well, one day when all these companies, Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, go out of business, and we're just playing our backlogs or playing, remasters or re-releases or something like that, we can go back to some of these games and check out the DLC. Like it is nice to see these successful games, blockbuster titles. I would say almost Dead Cells especially. Like they add to it, they make it better, they give out additional content. I know they re-released the physical version with that added content bundled in, which was a cool thing as well. But I'd love to get to it at some point. We'll see if that happens.
Mm-hmm.
The other game in 2018, I don't know if I played this on Switch. I might have even reviewed it on Switch, but I certainly played it on PC, and that's Darkest Dungeon. So Darkest Dungeon is, it's very much not actiony. It's definitely turn-based, probably closer to roguelike, actually, because there isn't a ton of progression that you make. Like once characters die, I don't think they come back. Like you need to re-recruit party members. So you can get different classes of characters. Like maybe like an alchemist, a rogue, a knight, and they all have different attacks and different stats that they bring to the party. And they are arranged kind of on a 2D screen. They're arranged in a group of 4, and based on their position in the group, like you would want to put the knight as your tank, you'd put him in the front, and his abilities are probably only going to affect maybe the first or second row of the enemy squad, which is also can be a group of 4. So based on where your character is in the lineup, they're going to have access to different abilities, and so part of maybe the strategy or the tactics in the game is altering your enemy's layout, bringing maybe their weaker healers to the front of the pack so you can attack them, but also avoiding your weaker characters being drawn to the front. Like if you've got a spellcaster or a bishop or maybe a paladin or something, and they're not as strong in terms of constitution, if they're brought to the forefront of the battle, they're going to take a lot of damage and they might die. Darkest Dungeon is probably the hardest game of all the ones we've talked about so far. Not only do you have to worry about your health meters entering combat, but you also have to worry about your sanity meter. So depending on events that happen through each run, if you maybe run out of food, or if it's getting too dark, or if your characters take critical hits, I think their sanity meter starts to fill up, and they can actually go crazy and then they're basically incapacitated that way. They become very useless. You can't really maybe necessarily tell them what to do. And so after you leave a dungeon with maybe the spoils that you do have, you actually have to pay money to bring their sanity meter back to normal. And so they might have to rest. Maybe they have to go to the church and pray, or I think they can go to like a brothel or something and seek some kind of restitution there. But yeah, Darkest Dungeon, really, really tough. Definitely not for the faint of heart. It can take a lot of runs to make any real progress. But yeah, it's been a long time since I've played it. I think it's very well made, but it's punishing for sure.
Yeah, 2018 is another year where I played one and you played the other.
Yeah.
Another game, I remember when it came out, hearing good things and meant to pick it up and just never got around to it. But it's on my backlog of things I want to play. But
I imagine it's a game, if you don't mind playing on PC, it's probably a game you could get cheap at some point. But it is excellent. Wherever you end up playing it, it is definitely worth a look. Almost just because you want to see like how I mean, again, we've talked about lots of roguelites that might have, or roguelikes that might have action elements to them, but this one certainly doesn't have any of that. It's all about, making good decisions and knowing when to push the tempo or to not take a risk and maybe to leave a dungeon early. You also have to, this resource management is probably the biggest concern here. I hadn't even really talked about, like, you need to bring, things that you can make torches so you have enough light, or, medical supplies so you can heal yourselves and things like that, heal status effects. So, yeah, a lot of things to juggle for sure, but a worthwhile experience nonetheless.
Yeah, and I think we're supposed to be seeing Darken Dungeon 2 in 2021, I think.
I'd forgotten about that, but I think that's right. And so that'll be a fun one to see what they do differently with the sequel.
Mm-hmm. And finally, we're into the Switch's launch year, 2017, and this is really where I come to appreciate the genre, because early on there wasn't a whole lot of Switch games, and so if you started getting into the indie stuff, like the indie games that I was enjoying were the roguelikes or roguelites, depending on which ones, but. Two that stood out for me in 2017. One is Nero from Flying Goat Games. So this one is an isometric shoot 'em up. So you're starting the game off as this little robot head, and you have a body, legs, and a gun on each arm, and you're going through. So you choose. There's, I think, about 5 or 6 different maps, I think it is. And so it'll tell you how many enemies are in the map. So the whole point of it is you just go in and clear the map and move on to the next one. And you just take the spoils of war. So you pick up the weapons, the armor. So it's the weapons, the legs, and the body. So you'll just be picking up different types of them throughout the level, and once you've cleared the map, you kind of go back to your home base, and you go through all of the loot that you've collected. You sell anything that your robot can't use, because there's like 3 styles of robot, basically like a tank, a speeder, a speed one, and I can't remember the third one, but if your robot can't use them, you just sell them for money, so that you can buy other things. But you could also just if retrofit your robot with different weapon types. And it really is just like a blow stuff up. that's the whole point of the game. Just get the biggest, baddest weapons and blow everything up on screen. There's nukes, there's flamethrowers, there's lasers. It's a terrific game. And
sounds like a David title to me.
Yeah. There's
blow up everything, leave nothing standing.
Yeah, exactly. Heavy emphasis on blowing stuff up, and it's really fun. I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, I haven't played this one, but I'm a little disappointed that you don't have a third game with the word void in it. You've got Void, Terrarium, Nero Voider, but the last one is not as such a game. But maybe 2021 will bring a new Void game for you.
Yeah, maybe. Another game that I enjoyed in 2017 though was Ironcast, and I'm still proud of the I have. As far as I know, I have the speed run of that game record. There was no record on the speedrun website, so it's me putting it on there and having not been beaten yet. And I still have my YouTube video of it, but Terrific game. You're playing in kind of like an alternate European setting where like France and England are at war, using these I guess like steampunk mechs, I guess would be the best way to describe it. And sort of the same thing where there's like a path, you choose paths to go. It's like your mech versus the other mech, turn-based. But it's on top of it being turn-based, it's also it's the three, what do they call the puzzle games where the match 3 puzzle game?
Match 3, yeah.
Yeah. So there'll be like the match, like the puzzle game's kind of in the middle, and what you're doing is you're trying to connect different types of, it's like whether it's ammo or like energy, you, by matching them in the puzzle, you're adding them to your inventory, and so that's how like you're able to shoot, or how you protect yourself, or how you build up shields. And yeah, you're just fighting a mech on until you get to the very end, and then there's the big bad mech at the end that you have to defeat. So it's, I mean, the runs themselves, like the game isn't overly long, like going from beginning to end, you could do it in like 2 hours or less. I think I was like at 1:45 was my speed run, but fantastic game that I enjoyed back when there was not a whole lot of games on my Switch.
I haven't played Ironcast, but just kind of looking back at all the titles we've mentioned this evening, like it really feels like there's so much wiggle room within the roguish games that, you know, you can probably find something you're going to enjoy, right? From something that's brutally difficult like Darkest Dungeon to something that's much more accessible like Hades, or even Dead Cells, I think. Like, so many, when I see so many people talking about these games that I know maybe it's not the type of game they love, it's not their favorite genre, it's not something they gravitate towards, but they're really into it. Like, even a game like Hades like that is definitely for me. I think that's kind of what's maybe beautiful, or maybe that's what's making these games so popular, why everybody's talking about roguelite and roguelike in 2020, is because, and maybe why so many developers are kind of leaning into those genres, is because they can really experiment within them and do new things with those kind of parameters that people have started to become more familiar with. So yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward now to seeing what creative people are going to be bringing out in even the rest of this year, and certainly the years to come, on the new platforms. You know, like how are they going to utilize the technology, you know, the faster loading times, the graphics to, you know, give us new experiences within these genres.